What happens when one of Britain's most respected actors walks into a television studio expecting a respectful conversation and instead finds himself under attack from a host who refuses to let him speak? In just 42 seconds, one inappropriate comment would turn a promotional interview into an explosive confrontation that would leave the entire panel speechless and the legendary Ian McKellen walking off the set in disgust. It was supposed to be a straightforward appearance on Loose Women. Sir Ian McKellen, beloved for his roles in everything from Shakespeare to The Lord of the Rings, had agreed to join the daytime talk show to discuss his latest theatrical production. What he didn't expect was that he would become the target of a host who seemed more interested in creating controversy than conducting an interview. The trouble started almost immediately after Ian settled into his seat on the famous Loose Women couch. The panel that day consisted of Denise Welch, who would be leading the interview, along with Nadia Sawalha, Janet Street Porter, and Kay Adams. The other panelists smiled warmly at Ian, clearly excited to have such a distinguished guest on the show. But Denise had something else in mind. Before Ian could even properly introduce himself to the audience, Denise jumped right in with her first question. "So, Ian," she said, leaning forward with a smirk that immediately set an uncomfortable tone, "you've been acting for what, about 100 years now? Do you ever think about actually retiring and letting some younger talent have a chance?" The audience gasped. You could see the other panelists exchange worried glances. Nadia's smile faltered, and Janet shifted uncomfortably in her seat. This was not the warm welcome anyone had expected. Ian, ever the professional, managed a polite smile. "Well, I wouldn't say 100 years," he replied calmly. "But I've been fortunate enough to work in this industry for quite some time, and I don't think experience should be seen as something negative. There's room for everyone in theater and film." But Denise wasn't satisfied with that answer. She pressed on, her voice dripping with something that felt less like curiosity and more like hostility. "Yes, but don't you think you're taking roles away from people who actually need them? I mean, you've had your time in the spotlight. Why not step aside?" Kay Adams tried to interject, clearly sensing the conversation was heading in the wrong direction. "Denise, I think what's wonderful about Ian's career is how he continues to inspire." But Denise held up her hand, cutting Kay off mid-sentence. No, I want to hear what he has to say about this," Denise insisted, her eyes fixed on Ian. "Because I think it's a valid question. How do you justify continuing to take work when there are so many struggling actors out there who can't get their foot in the door?" Ian took a deep breath. You could see him trying to maintain his composure, trying to give Denise the benefit of the doubt. "I understand your concern," he said slowly, "but I don't think the solution to helping young actors is for experienced actors to simply stop working. The industry isn't a zero-sum game, and frankly, I'm still passionate about what I do. I prepare for every role with the same dedication I had when I was starting out." Nadia jumped in, trying to steer the conversation to safer ground, "And that dedication really shows, Ian. Your recent work has been absolutely brilliant. Can you tell us about your new play?" For a moment, it seemed like the interview might recover. Ian's face brightened as he began to speak about the production he was so excited to share with the audience. "Thank you, Nadia. Yes, we're doing a modern adaptation of King Lear, and what's fascinating about this particular production is..." But Denise interrupted him again. "King Lear? Another Shakespeare role? How original." Her tone was dripping with sarcasm. "Don't you think you've done enough Shakespeare by now? It's the same old thing over and over again with you, isn't it?" The other panelists looked absolutely mortified. Janet Street Porter, known for her own blunt speaking style, even looked shocked at Denise's behavior. "Denise, that's a bit harsh, don't you think?" Janet said. "Ian is a Shakespearean actor. That's what he does, and he does it brilliantly." "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking," Denise shot back, waving her hand dismissively at Janet. "We've all seen him do Shakespeare a million times. Why should we care about another one?" Ian's expression had changed now. The polite smile was gone, replaced by something harder. "Because," he said, his voice quiet but firm, "Shakespeare's work is timeless. Every generation brings something new to his plays. And if you'd let me finish, I was about to explain what makes this production unique." "Oh, here we go with the lecture," Denise said, rolling her eyes dramatically. "This is exactly what I mean. You theater people are so pretentious. You think you're better than everyone else just because you prance around on stage reciting lines written 400 years ago." That was it. You could see something shift in Ian's demeanor. He sat up straighter, and when he spoke, His voice had an edge to it that hadn't been there before. Pretentious? I came here today to have a conversation about my work, about the art form I love, and instead I'm being interrogated and insulted. This isn't an interview, Denise. This is an ambush. Kay Adams nodded vigorously. Ian's absolutely right. This is supposed to be a friendly chat, not an attack. But Denise wasn't backing down. If anything, she seemed energized by the confrontation. Oh, I'm sorry. Am I not being respectful enough for you, Sir Ian? Should I bow and curtsy every time I ask you a question? Maybe that's what you're used to. Everyone treating you like royalty just because you've been in a few movies. A few? Movies? Nadia interjected, her voice incredulous. Denise? Ian is one of the most accomplished actors of our time. What are you doing? Denise turned on Nadia. I'm doing my job, Nadia. I'm asking the tough questions that nobody else wants to ask. Just because someone's famous doesn't mean we should just sit here and fawn all over them. There's a difference between asking tough questions and being rude, Janet added. And right now, you're being rude. Ian held up his hand, gesturing for the other panelists to stop. It's all right, he said to them, before turning his attention back to Denise. I understand that television needs conflict to be interesting. I understand that you might feel the need to create drama for your audience. But I'm a human being, Denise. I deserve basic respect, just like anyone else. Basic respect? Denise scoffed. You're sitting there in your expensive suit with your fancy title, talking about respect? What about respect for all the normal people out there who work real jobs? What about respect for the young actors you're blocking from success? That's not how it works, and you know it, Ian replied, his patience clearly wearing thin. I'm not blocking anyone from anything. I audition for roles just like everyone else. I work hard just like everyone else. And I certainly don't deserve to be spoken to this way just because I've been successful, Kay tried once more to intervene. Can we please just move on to talking about the play? I'm sure our audience would love to hear about it. But Denise was on a roll now, and she wasn't about to let it go. No, I don't think we should move on. I think we should talk about the real issue here, which is Ian's ego. You come on this show expecting us to just praise you and ask you softball questions, but that's not what we do here. We have real conversations. Real conversations? Ian repeated, his voice rising slightly. Real conversations involve listening to the other person. They involve giving someone the chance to speak without constantly interrupting them. They involve a basic level of courtesy. What you're doing isn't a real conversation, Denise. It's a performance. And it's a rather cruel one at that. The audience was completely silent now, watching this train wreck unfold in real time. Nadia looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. Janet was shaking her head in disbelief, and Kay had her head in her hands. Denise leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. Oh, so now I'm cruel? That's rich, coming from someone who spent his entire career playing pretend while the rest of us live in the real world. Playing pretend? Ian's voice was incredulous now. Is that what you think acting is? Playing pretend? Theater and film are art forms. They require skill, dedication, years of training and practice. They bring joy and meaning to people's lives. What you're doing right now, tearing someone down for no reason, that's not art. That's not skill. That's just mean-spirited. Oh, get over yourself, Denise snapped. You actors are all the same. You think what you do is so important, so meaningful. But at the end of the day, you're just entertainment. You're no better than a clown at a children's birthday party. Janet couldn't stay silent anymore. Denise, stop it. This has gone too far. Stay out of this, Janet. Denise shot back without even looking at her. Ian stood up slowly. The movement was deliberate, dignified. He carefully removed the microphone that had been clipped to his jacket. I don't need to listen to this, he said quietly. I came here in good faith to talk about something I care deeply about. Instead, I've been belittled, mocked, and insulted. I've spent my entire career treating people with respect, no matter who they are or what they do, and I expect the same in return. Denise laughed. Actually, laughed. What are you going to do? Walk off? Go ahead. Prove my point about actors being dramatic. Ian looked at her for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was calm but firm. The dramatic thing would be to stay here and engage with someone who clearly has no interest in having a genuine conversation. The dignified thing, the right thing, is to leave. Ian, please don't go, Nadia pleaded. We'd really love to hear about your play. I appreciate that, Nadia, Ian said, offering her a kind smile. And Janet, Kay, thank you for trying to keep things civil. but I won't be disrespected like this. Not by anyone." He turned to walk off the set, but Denise couldn't resist one final jab. "This is exactly what I was talking about. You can't handle a little criticism, so you run away." How mature. Ian stopped and turned back. For a moment, everyone thought he might say something cutting, something that would put Denise in her place. But instead, he simply shook his head sadly. "This wasn't criticism, Denise. Criticism is constructive. It's meant to help someone improve or to spark genuine debate. What you did today was simply cruel, and I genuinely hope you reflect on that." With that, he walked off the set, leaving behind a stunned audience and a panel in complete disarray. The remaining panelists sat in shocked silence for several seconds. Finally, Kay spoke up, her voice shaky. "Well, that was unexpected." Nadia turned to Denise, her expression a mixture of anger and disappointment. "Are you happy now? We just lost one of the greatest actors of our generation because you decided to be needlessly hostile." "Oh, please," Denise said, though she looked less confident now than she had moments before. He was being oversensitive. Oversensitive? Janet's voice was sharp. "Denise, you called his life's work playing pretend and compared him to a clown. How did you expect him to react?" "I was trying to have a real conversation," Denise insisted. But her voice had lost some of its earlier conviction. "No," Kay said firmly. "You were trying to create drama. And you succeeded. But at what cost? We've just humiliated a guest on live television." An uncomfortable silence settled over the panel. Denise shifted in her seat, clearly uncomfortable with the unified front her fellow panelists were presenting against her. "I was just asking questions," she said defensively. "Questions that people want answered." "No one wanted those answers," Nadia replied. "No one tuned in today hoping to watch you tear down Ian McKellen. They wanted to hear him talk about his work, about his experiences, about the things that make him passionate. Instead, they got to watch you bully him." "I wasn't bullying him," Denise protested. "Yes, you were," Janet said bluntly, "and we all saw it. The audience saw it, and Ian McKellen, one of the most gracious and professional people in the entertainment industry, felt he had no choice but to walk out. That should tell you something." Denise opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. For once, she seemed at a loss for what to say. Kay turned to the camera, trying to salvage what was left of the show. "We're going to take a quick break," she said, her professional smile not quite reaching her eyes. "When we come back, we'll be discussing, well, we'll figure that out during the break." As soon as they cut to commercial, chaos erupted on the set. Producers rushed over, trying to figure out what had just happened and how to handle the rest of the show. The other panelists immediately rounded on Denise. "What were you thinking?" Nadia demanded. "That was completely out of line. He needed to be taken down a peg," Denise said. But her voice lacked conviction now. "Why?" Janet asked. "What did he ever do to you? He came here to promote his play, and you turned it into a circus." "I was trying to ask real questions," Denise repeated, her go-to defense. "There's a way to ask challenging questions without being disrespectful," Kay said. "You crossed a line, Denise. Multiple lines, actually." One of the producers approached the group, looking stressed. "We need to figure out what we're doing for the rest of the show," he said. "We've lost our main guest, and we still have 30 minutes to fill." "Maybe we should address what just happened," Nadia suggested. "The audience deserves an acknowledgement that things went wrong." "Wrong?" Denise interjected. "Nothing went wrong. Ian McKellen couldn't handle a tough interview, so he left. That's on him, not us." The other three panelists stared at her in disbelief. "You genuinely don't see what you did wrong, do you?" Janet asked. "I don't think I did anything wrong," Denise replied stubbornly. Kay sighed deeply. "Then that's a problem, Denise, because the rest of us, the producers, and I'm guessing most of the audience, all saw what happened. You weren't tough. You were mean. There's a difference." The producer cleared his throat. "Ladies, we're back in 2 minutes. Whatever we're doing, we need to decide now." "I think we should apologize," Nadia said. "On behalf of the show, we should apologize to Ian and to the audience for what they just witnessed." "I'm not apologizing," Denise said flatly. "Then don't," Janet replied, "but the rest of us will." When they came back from the commercial break, the atmosphere on set was completely different. The easy camaraderie that usually characterized loose women was gone, replaced by visible tension. Kay addressed the camera first. Welcome back. As you can see, we're down one guest, and I think we owe both Ian McKellen and our viewers an explanation and an apology. Denise stared straight ahead, her jaw set. Nadia picked up where Kay left off. What happened before the break was not okay. Ian came here as our guest, and he was treated disrespectfully. As a panel, we should have done better to ensure he felt welcome. Some of us tried, Janet added pointedly, glancing at Denise. But clearly, we didn't try hard enough. Ian McKellen is a treasure, Kay continued. His contributions to theater and film are immeasurable, and he deserved better than what he received today. For that, we're sorry. The camera panned across the panel and viewers could see Denise sitting rigidly, refusing to participate in the apology. We hope Ian knows that not all of us share the views expressed earlier, Nadia said carefully. And we hope he'll consider giving us another chance in the future, though we'd certainly understand if he chose not to. The rest of the show was awkward, to say the least. The panelists tried to move on to other topics, but the tension was palpable. Denise barely spoke, and when she did, the others responded with cool politeness at best. During another commercial break, Janet turned to Denise. "You've made this very uncomfortable for all of us." "I stand by what I said," Denise replied, though she wouldn't meet Janet's eyes. "Of course you do," Janet said with a sigh. "You always do." Back. On set, during a segment about holiday planning, an audience member raised her hand. When called upon, she stood up, visibly emotional. "I just want to say that I came here today because I'm a huge fan of Ian McKellen. I've loved his work since I was a child, and what I saw today broke my heart. That man has brought so much joy to so many people, and he was treated appallingly. I think you," she pointed directly at Denise, "should be ashamed of yourself." The audience erupted in applause. Denise's face turned red, but she still refused to back down. "Everyone's entitled to their opinion," Denise said tersely. "Yes, they are," the audience member replied. "And my opinion is that you were cruel and unprofessional. Ian McKellen showed more class in walking away than you showed in your entire interview." More applause from the audience. Even some of the crew members were nodding in agreement. Kay tried to regain control. "Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Let's move on." But another audience member stood up. "No, I think we need to talk about this. What happened today was bullying, pure and simple, and it shouldn't be brushed under the carpet." "It wasn't bullying." Denise finally spoke up, her voice defensive. "I was asking legitimate questions. There was nothing legitimate about the way you spoke to him." A third audience member chimed in. "You were rude from the moment he sat down. It was uncomfortable to watch." Nadia nodded slowly. "I think our audience is right. What happened today crossed a line." "Oh, so now we're going to have a tribunal?" Denise snapped. "Everyone against Denise? It's not about being against you," Kay said wearily. "It's about acknowledging that something went very wrong today. The only thing that went wrong was that Ian McKellen couldn't handle a real conversation," Denise insisted. Janet shook her head. "You keep saying that, but it doesn't make it true. The man endured 2 hours of questioning by the most. Aggressive interviewers in the business. He's done press tours all over the world. The idea that he can't handle tough questions is absurd. What he couldn't handle, what no one should have to handle, was being disrespected in that way." Before the next commercial break, another audience member raised her hand urgently. Kay, desperate for any distraction from the awkwardness, called on her immediately. "I just want to say something," the woman began, her voice trembling with emotion. "I'm a teacher, and I use Ian McKellen's work in my classroom. I show my students his performances to inspire them, to show them what dedication and passion look like. And today, I brought my daughter here because she's studying theater at university. She wanted to meet him, to maybe ask him for advice, and instead, we watched him being humiliated. Her daughter, sitting beside her, was visibly crying. "He's my hero," the young woman said. "I've studied every performance, every interview. He's the reason I want to act. And you," she looked at Denise with such disappointment, "you destroyed what could have been the best day of my life." The silence that followed was deafening. Even Denise seemed momentarily affected, though she quickly hardened her expression again. "I'm sorry you feel that way," Denise said, her tone more defensive than apologetic. "But I have a job to do here." "Your job is to interview guests," Janet interjected sharply, "not to attack them. There's a difference, and today you failed to recognize it." Kay turned to the young woman in the audience. "I'm so sorry. If there's any way we can make this up to you and your mother." "There isn't," the mother replied firmly. The damage is done. We came here with such excitement, and we're leaving with disappointment and anger. That's on this show. That's on her. She pointed at Denise without hesitation. Another voice from the audience, an older gentleman this time. I've been watching this show for years. My wife loved it before she passed, but after today, I don't think I can watch anymore. What I saw was bullying, plain and simple. And if this is what Loose Women has become, then it's not the show I thought it was. Nadia looked devastated. Sir, please know that this is not what we stand for. What happened today was an aberration, not the norm. Was it, though? Another audience member challenged. Or is this just the first time someone had the courage to walk out? How many other guests have sat there, uncomfortable, just trying to get through the interview? The question hung in the air, heavy and accusatory. The panelists shifted uncomfortably, unable to provide a reassuring answer. Denise finally spoke up, her voice rising. This is ridiculous. We're acting like I committed some terrible crime. I asked some pointed questions. That's what journalists do. If Ian McKellen can't handle that, then maybe he's not as professional as everyone thinks he is. The audience erupted in angry disagreement. Several people stood up, shouting their objections. The atmosphere had gone from uncomfortable to hostile. Stop, Kay said loudly, trying to regain control. Everyone, please, this is getting out of hand. It got out of hand the moment your colleague decided to ambush a guest, someone yelled back. Janet stood up, commanding attention with her presence. Listen, everyone, I understand you're angry. We're angry too. What you witnessed today was not okay. We know that. We're dealing with it. But right now, we need to finish this show with some semblance of professionalism. Why should we be professional when she wasn't? Another audience member demanded, gesturing at Denise. It was a fair question, and no one had a good answer. The show limped to its conclusion with an atmosphere that could only be described as toxic. The usually warm closing, where the panelists would laugh and tease each other, was replaced by stiff pleasantries and forced smiles. As soon as the camera stopped rolling, Denise stood up and walked off the set without a word to anyone. The other panelists remained seated, looking exhausted. That was a disaster, Nadia said quietly. It didn't have to be, Kay replied. Ian is such a lovely man. He would have been a wonderful guest if he'd been given the chance. I still can't believe what I witnessed, Janet said, shaking her head. In all my years in television, I've never seen a host treat a guest that way. It was painful to watch. A producer approached them. We're getting a lot of calls, he said. Viewers are not happy. I'm not surprised, Nadia said. What happened today was wrong on every level. Do you think Ian will ever come back? The producer asked. The three panelists looked at each other and simultaneously shook their heads. Would you? Janet asked. After being treated like that? The producer sighed. Fair point. Meanwhile, backstage, Ian McKellen was gathering his belongings with the help of his assistant. A young production assistant approached hesitantly. Mr. McKellen, I just wanted to say I'm so sorry about what happened out there. We all are. That's not what this show is supposed to be about. Ian smiled kindly at her. Thank you, dear. That's very sweet of you to say. I know it's not your fault. For what it's worth, the assistant continued, I think you handled that with incredible grace. A lot of people would have lost their temper, but you stayed calm and dignified the whole time. Well, Ian said with a slight smile, I've had a lot of practice staying in character under difficult circumstances. Though I must admit, I'd rather be dealing with a difficult director than a hostile host. Will you ever come back to the show? She asked. Ian paused, considering the question. I don't think so, he said finally. Life is too short to spend time with people who don't treat you with basic kindness. There are plenty of other places where I can discuss my work with people who are actually interested in hearing about it. As Ian left the building, several staff members stopped him to apologize and express their support. He was gracious to each of them, thanking them for their kindness and professionalism. Back on the Loose Women set, the other panelists were still processing what had happened. I feel like we need to do something more, Nadia said. A proper apology, maybe a statement. I agree, Kay said. What happened today doesn't represent what the show is about. We need to make that clear. Good luck getting Denise to agree to that, Janet said dryly. Maybe it's time to have a serious conversation about whether Denise should continue to be part of this panel, Nadia suggested carefully. The others exchanged glances but didn't disagree. The incident sent shockwaves through the television industry. Ian McKellen had walked out of interviews before when questions became inappropriate, but never quite like this. And never had the other panelists so clearly sided against their colleague during a live broadcast. For Denise Welch, the backlash was immediate and severe. Social media exploded with criticism of her behavior. Fellow actors came to Ian's defense. Theater communities rallied around him. Even people who had never particularly cared about loose women weighed in on what they'd witnessed. But none of that mattered in the moment. In that studio, in those 42 seconds after Denise made her first inappropriate comment, everything changed. A conversation that should have been warm and enlightening became hostile and cruel. A guest who should have been celebrated was instead attacked, and a host who should have facilitated discussion instead created conflict. Ian McKellen had spent decades building a reputation as one of the most professional, kind, and talented actors in the world. He had worked with everyone from unknown theater students to Hollywood superstars, and he treated them, all with the same respect and dignity. He had given countless interviews, always generous with his time and insights, always patient with questions, always gracious even when journalists were unprepared or uninformed. But everyone has their limits. And on that day, on that couch, facing a host who seemed determined to provoke rather than converse, Ian McKellen reached his. The moment he stood up and removed his microphone, he made a choice. He chose self-respect over publicity. He chose dignity over drama. He chose to walk away rather than participate in something that had become toxic. And in doing so, he taught everyone watching an important lesson. You don't have to accept mistreatment, no matter who's doing it or where it's happening. You don't have to smile and endure rudeness in the name of professionalism. Sometimes the most professional thing you can do is recognize when a situation has become untenable and remove yourself from it. Denise Welch sat on that couch after Ian left, insisting she'd done nothing wrong. She maintained that she was just asking tough questions, just doing her job, just being real. But everyone else in that studio, from her fellow panelists to the audience to the crew, saw the truth. She had crossed a line. She had taken something that should have been pleasant and turned it into something ugly. The other panelists, Nadia, Janet, and Kay, did their best to salvage the situation. They apologized. They acknowledged the problem. They made it clear they didn't support what had happened, but the damage was done. The interview was over. Ian was gone. And Loose Women had a black mark on its record that would take a long time to fade. In the end, it wasn't about tough questions or real conversations or any of the other justifications Denise tried to hide behind. It was about basic human decency. It was about treating people with respect, especially when they're your guest, especially when they've done nothing to deserve hostility. Ian McKellen walked into that studio expecting to have a conversation about his passion, his craft, his latest project. Instead, he was subjected to 42 seconds of comments so inappropriate, so disrespectful, that he had no choice but to leave. And he did so with more grace and dignity than many people could have mustered under the same circumstances. The heated exchange on Loose Women that day became a cautionary tale about the difference between challenging journalism and simple rudeness. It showed what happens when a host confuses controversy with content, when someone mistakes meanness for authenticity. And it reminded everyone watching that some people, like Ian McKellen, have spent too many years earning respect through their talent and professionalism to waste time on those who won't give it to them.